The wind rolled low across the plains the night she said it, carrying dust, old memories, and the smell of rain that never quite reached this side of the valley. And the cowboy Elias Boone stood leaning against the rough pine post of his porch, hat low, eyes steady, the kind of man whose silence had weight, while she stood there with her coat drawn tight, lantern light trembling in her hand as if it carried all her courage. And when her voice finally broke the stillness, it came out sharper than she meant it to. "I'm not a virgin," she said, like a confession and a shield at the same time, as if the words might wound him before he could wound her, because life had taught her to strike first. And for a moment the world seemed to pause. The horses stilled, the crickets hushed, and Elias simply looked at her, really looked at her, not the past she feared, not the scars she carried inside, but the woman standing in front of him, tired, honest, unafraid to be truthful even when it hurt. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle. "I never asked you to be," he said. And those 6 words fell heavier than any judgment ever could, because they carried no accusation, no ownership, no demand, only acceptance. And she felt something inside her loosen, something she had carried for years, like a locked door finally opening, because every man before him had asked questions with their eyes, measured her worth against something she could never change. And here was a man who didn't flinch, didn't pry, didn't turn her past into a weapon. And she found herself blinking back tears she didn't want him to see, but he saw them anyway, because Elias Boone had spent a lifetime reading storms before they broke. And he stepped aside, not closer, not farther, just enough to give her space, and told her she could stay the night, not as a bargain, not as a promise, just because the wind was cruel and the road was long. And as she crossed the threshold of his home, she realized that this was the first place she'd entered where she didn't feel like she had to explain herself. And days turned into weeks, and weeks into something quieter and stronger, built from shared meals, early mornings, hard work, and long silences that felt safe instead of lonely. And she learned that Elias had buried a wife years ago, not in the ground alone but in his chest, sealing off a part of himself he thought would never breathe again. And he learned that she had been loved wrongly, left wrongly, judged harshly, and survived anyway. And there were nights when they sat on the porch without touching, the stars stretched wide above them, and she would talk about the things she feared saying out loud, and he would listen like every word mattered, because to him it did. And when at last their hands met, it wasn't hunger that guided them but trust, the slow understanding that love didn't demand perfection. It offered shelter. And when the town whispered, as towns always do, Elias never once defended her with anger, only with presence, standing beside her in church, at the market, in the open daylight, telling the world without words that her past was not a stain, but a road that led her here. And when she asked him once, quietly, why he never cared about what she had been before, he smiled in that small way of his and said, "Because I'm not building a life with yesterday." And in that moment she understood that love was not about being untouched, but about being chosen, fully and freely. And if this story moved you, if you believe love should be written with respect, courage, and truth, then subscribe to Wild West Dairies, where every story honors the heart beneath the dust, the strength behind the silence, and the kind of love that doesn't ask who you were, only who you are becoming.